Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, the port of the original NES game onto the Game Boy Color. Or at least that's what you'd come away thinking if you just selected one of the many options available on the title screen, because this game has much more content than just an NES ROM printed onto a Game Boy cartridge. I'm Spacious Boundary, and I'm on a quest to talk about all the lesser talked about Mario games. Getting back to it, let's take a look at the differences between this version and the original. At its core, the Deluxe version is simply a direct port, albeit with a slightly zoomed in screen due to the Game Boy's smaller resolution. And to start things off with a negative, yeah, this sounds just as bad as you think it would. There were several times I died just because I couldn't see what was ahead or below me. Most embarrassingly is this death in a castle level where I hit my head on a ceiling I couldn't see existed. You can use up and down on the D-pad to scroll up and down the camera, but this feels more like a band-aid patch more than anything else. Although I did eventually come to rely on this feature once I got to the later, more trickier levels. The sound is also ever so slightly off. It still sounds in the ballpark of how you'd expect it to, just a little bit different. But beyond the moment-to-moment gameplay, the most immediately noticeable difference would be the addition of a world map that appears in between levels. We can now finally see what this game would look like from an aerial view, if that's something you've always dreamed of. Mario even has a little cutscene for him stomping down the castle, kinda like he did in Super Mario World. Speaking of the castles, they fancied up those cutscenes at the end. The Toads now have this little animation of them jumping for joy, and I'm gonna be honest, it kinda scared me the first time I saw it. I'm so used to these sprites being static images that the idea of them moving, let alone rapidly jumping up and down, was just too much for my brain to handle. Once you get to the final castle, you'll notice that Peach also has animations now, leaning over and kissing Mario on the nose. Another pretty noticeable change is that due to the removal of the classic swap the controller multiplayer mode, Luigi is now playable in single player, and it's as simple as pressing select on the world map. The final change is only really noticeable depending on how bad you are. The game over system is completely reworked. Now it's much more lenient, only making you lose all your points when you run out of lives. And you might think that this makes gaming over completely meaningless, like who goes for a high score in Super Mario Bros? Well, maybe you should, because after getting 300,000 points on the leaderboard, you unlock the Lost Levels, an entire second game. Here, however, they call it Super Mario Bros. For super players. And that's all that's going on inside of this button, but if we take a step back, we can see that there are several other options. Challenge is an alternate game mode that has 3 different goals to complete in each level. The first one being to collect 5 red coins spread throughout the level, either out in the open or inside of blocks. The second challenge is scoring a certain amount of points, and the third one, strangely enough, is to find hidden Yoshi eggs. Yeah, Yoshi's in this game. You can't ride him or anything, but knowing that Miyamoto always wanted to have Yoshi in the original Super Mario Bros. Makes his inclusion here pretty notable. But back to the challenge mode, the Yoshi eggs are always hidden inside an invisible block somewhere in the level. After finding your first Yoshi egg, you unlock a hint system that shows you the general area the invisible blocks are. Honestly, I have no idea how you're expected to find these things without hints. I only found the one in 1-1 because I accidentally got spoiled on where it was, and then I actively tried to find the ones in the rest of World 1, but to no avail. Out of all the new modes, this one definitely adds the most replay value, and sort of like Super Mario 35, it really tests your knowledge of these levels. The next one down is Versus Game. Using the Game Boy Link cable, you can race your friends through remix levels. If you don't have friends though, then don't worry, these same remix levels are also used in the next option, You versus Boo. This is effectively a single-player version of the multiplayer mode, except instead of racing Luigi, you race a Boo, and each time you beat them, you unlock the next tier of Boo, with each one getting faster and faster. These levels also have a bunch of blocks that swap states on a timer that are designed to slow you down. They can manually be swapped with a switch block, so planning out a route that takes them into consideration is mandatory if you want to get a good time. Functionality-wise, they remind me a lot of the on-off blocks in Super Mario Maker. Heading on back to the title screen, we have this row along the bottom. The first is Records. It shows you the top scores earned on the cartridge, along with a table to keep track of your challenge mode accomplishments. To the right is Album. Inside, you can see artwork celebrating various feats from throughout your adventure, sorta like a retro version of an achievement system in modern games. And finally, down here we have the Toy Box. Inside, we've got all the essentials, a calendar that can go all the way up to the year 3000, and a fortune-telling card game. At the bottom, however, is where the actually cool stuff is. This is where the Yoshi Egg hint system is found, and to the left of that is this little mouse hole that leads us to a room with Peach and some toads sitting around a table. These are actually the very same toads you save at the end of each world, as they only start showing up in this room as you rescue them. Selecting any of them will allow you to cycle through various artwork, sprites, and other images. Some of these even let you put your own custom text on top of them. The idea here is that they're all compatible with the Game Boy printer, so you can print out your own custom message or some sprites to do whatever you would do with Mario decorated pieces of paper. You know, if you think about it, this game is sort of like a precursor to the much more well-remembered Super Mario Advanced series of games. Kinda like a pilot episode, if you will. Something else that occurred to me while playing is that this type of game just wouldn't be made anymore. Ever since the Wii, anytime Nintendo wanted to bring back the original Super Mario Bros, they just put the NES one on the Virtual Console. It sort of reminds me of Super Mario 64 DS like that in a way. When they wanted to bring this game to the next generation of gamers, they fancied it up, added new content, made it feel fresh again. But ever since they could just put the original game on the newest system, they opted for that instead, leaving all the new content and features of its first re-release behind. As it stands, the only time I ever see people acknowledge this game is as the NES game, but on a Game Boy. It was impressive for its time, but the zoomed-in screen really holds it back. Which sucks, because this game is more than that, but you know that by now.